And coming up next, we've got media news number 157. It's an all-genre media news, and we've got stories on the return of Cannonball Run. Oh, you know you want it. You really do. We've also got the return of Mr. Ed. Oh, can this get any better? We've also got stories on Bryan Singer wants to remake Battlestar Galactica. Oh, not that crummy Sci-Fi Channel version. His much better version. This is, I tell you, this is really getting better.
Shiny.
We've also got stories on Captain Underpants, Dr. Seuss, and much, much more. It's believe me, it's going to be better than it sounds. All that and more coming right up.
You say obscure like it's a bad thing. Media News, episode 157. The fiasco of Firecracker Face.
Juicy.
That's planned.
Man, I tasted that.
I want people to
Hey,
know.
folks, how you doing? Hi,
Oh, Foster Brooks. Time for media.
It's not funnier than drunk.
Media news.
That beautiful downtown.
Can I be red buttons?
I'm
Stan Lee never had a dinner.
going to get in a car and kill some people.
Oh, I swear to God, I didn't put the gas.
There's nothing funnier than a drunk who kills people.
There really is nothing funnier than a drunk. Is
Drunk who kills a family in an
That's
SUV.
right. Oh, how we laughed and laughed. What a Christmas that was.
I can't.
Hey folks, how you doing? Comic Book Man here. Welcome once again to my video outhouse. It's time for
It's time for drunken media news.
Media News, which is, we're stone cold sober. Media News. Media News is coming from
Speak
this
for
place.
yourself.
Alternate Reality, which is located at the intersection of 111th and Kedzie in beautiful downtown Mount Greenwood. Alternate Reality, where all new comics are always 15% off every day for everyone. This is an all media news. It's not franchise, not comic book. It's just straight genre media news. And our
All
first
media
story
media.
up. First story up comes from Scandinavia. We're going to talk about the girl
With the dragon.
with the dragon tattoo, which is huge in Europe. They made there was a series of books,
Series of books.
made into a series of movies.
Yep, in Scandinavia, yes.
They've been working on an American version of it over here, and it's coming our way when?
Christmas Time by director David Fincher, who gave us, he won the Oscar for, no, he didn't win the Oscar, I'm sorry, Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Gets a poke in the eye for
He did
Alien
Seven
3.
with Brad Pitt. That was a film people loved.
Her head cut off. She got her
Yeah.
head cut
Oh no, he did last year's the Facebook movie,
Oh, yeah.
which
the Facebook movie.
which nearly won the Oscar. So he's a highly touted director. This is a potential Oscar contender as well. There's problems in Dragon Tattoo Land. Kids.
What's the matter?
Well, Fincher has this problem where his first cuts are always 3 hours plus.
Okay.
On his
So
movies.
you go back and recut it then.
Well, he got it down to 3 hours.
Okay.
it was 3 plus. He got it down to 3.
Nobody's going to sit
And,
through a 3-hour
well,
movie.
Sony is saying that very same thing. They said we'd like this to be no longer than 2 hours and 20 minutes, and Fincher's saying that's going to be kind of hard because the material is pretty damn dense,
Yeah.
and for me to pare it down to 2 hours and 20 minutes is going to be a little bit of a stretch. So we've got some loggerheads going on right now. So how this plays out, I don't know. He went through this with Benjamin Button as well. He ended up cutting that down to 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. So
Yeah.
they met in the middle. I'm sure they're going to meet in the middle on this one too.
Okay. So they're working on it.
They're working on it. I think Fincher will get his way though.
Okay, we're going to take a right turn into children's programming for a little bit. Our
Yes.
first story up is in
second
children's
story.
programming.
Children's
For
yes.
children's
Oh,
programming. Our second story, our first
You
story
know-
for children's programming.
Exactly.
Is
I'm
involving the return of a beloved television franchise. Hello!
Who's?
Mr. Comic Book Man.
I have to ask you, Comic Book Man, beloved by who? Because man, I hate that show. I hated it.
I watched Mr. Ed a lot in the 60s because there was nothing else on.
What, you couldn't find any drugs?
I remember
What-
the original run. I remember watching the original run.
I hated it. I really hated it. I despised that show.
I was like 4 when it was on.
I
but
despised
remember
it at the
watching
age of 4. I despise it now, many years later. But
Alan Young, the great Alan Young was in it.
I have no problem with Alan
Philby.
Young. I just, talking animals, just... You know what the thing was? They took a horse and they put a bunch of gum in his mouth, so it made him look like.
Well,
he
they
talked.
wires in his mouth.
Even
too,
better.
and all sorts
Even
of stuff.
better.
And
But-
all sorts of stuff Peter would go crazy about today.
Because
Rightly so, too.
we've got all these things coming back and making a ton of money. Well, 20th Century Fox has the movie rights to make Mr. Ed into a feature film, and from what I understand, this is how they're going to do it. There won't be any wires. There won't be any gum. It'll be a real
won't be any
horse.
horse.
It won't be any horse. Only on the behind the scenes on the set. But there will be an actual horse, living, breathing horse,
Yeah.
whose mouth will be animated through the magic of CG technology.
Which is so tough to do. Have you seen Babe Pig in the City?
I have no interest in seeing that at all.
So, a brief side note, I'm throwing you a ringer on this. Mr. Ed was originally based out of the Donald O'Connor
Francis the Talking
Talking Mule
Series of
which
films.
was a series. It was,
feature
believe it or
film.
not, it was a series of films in the late 40s, I believe it
Long
was.
forgotten.
Long forgotten, but Donald O'Connor was the star of it, and involved Francis the Talking Mule.
Yeah, I even think they went into
That's
the
where its
army
genealogy
at one
comes from.
point, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Boy,
Yeah, I
God, I
remember.
remember that. How do I remember
Didn't
that?
he run for president?
Francis the Talking Mule ran for president. He'd have a good shot this year in the Republican Party.
We're not going to get to that.
No.
Staying with children's programming,
More children's stuff.
Dr. Seuss, Theodore Geisel, they're making a biopic based on his life. Of course, Dr. Seuss wrote the best children's books in the
Yes,
world.
he did, bar none.
Bar none.
Bar none. Johnny
Bar none.
Depp will be playing Dr. Theodore Geisel, also known as Dr. Seuss, in a biopic that Depp will also be producing.
What, there's
Depp
only
has,
3 actors in Hollywood?
I mean,
It's
Robert Downey Jr. and Johnny Depp. Johnny
and
Depp has
Daniel Craig. There's only 3 guys in
Johnny
Hollywood.
Depp, he's what, the pirate guy. He's Tonto in the Lone Ranger. He's
Dark
Barnabas
Shadows.
Collins.
Mason, yeah.
He's everybody. Well, that's Robert Downey Jr.
Thank you.
But
Oh,
yeah, Johnny Depp, theater guy, and I would like to see and Depp. It reminds me, Depp played J.M. Barrie in a biopic of the author of Peter Pan.
Peter Pan guy, right?
Oh,
several
that's
years
right.
ago.
He did.
So
I
this
forgot
is
actually
about
really-
that.
That's
That's
so did
right.
I. Till just
That
Yeah,
wasn't
I
really
forgot
good.
all about. No, you're right.
Kate Winslet. That was a.
Kate Winslet's a
that was
really good
movie.
film. So this could have a pedigree.
And the idea what this thing's gonna be like is this gonna be one of those things where he wrote these wonderful children's books and he was a really miserable
tormented,
person
yeah.
I
in real
don't
life. It's
think
gonna be
so.
one of those
From what I
things.
understand, Geisel didn't have that sort of life where things were really, really terrible for him. I'm sure it's a life story. You know what would be neat, and they could do it today, is if they interspersed his life with animated sequences with the characters and that
Yeah.
sort of thing too.
If they did it right.
Yeah, if they did it right, I think it would be pretty interesting.
Staying with children's programming.
Yes.
There's a series of kids' books out there called Captain Underpants,
Yes.
which was past my time. I never read Captain Underpants, but I've had lots of people asking me about it over the years here at the store. Do you have Captain Underpants books? No, they're not comics; they're book
Yes.
books, and so no, I don't carry them.
Yep.
But I've had people ask me
There's
about
like
them here at the store.
30 of these darn things too. Captain Underpants, DreamWorks Animation, the folks who give us Shrek and Puss in Boots and all that stuff, now have the rights to do Captain Underpants. You know, Comic Man, the only reason I included this story
Yes.
for us to do is because I just wanted to go on here and say Captain Underpants.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Thank you all for indulging me
Da-da-da-da.
and letting me say on the YouTubes,
Captain
Captain Underpants. Good
Well,
night, everybody.
Well, it's
Halloween's coming up. What are you going to be?
Captain
Captain
Underpants.
Underpants.
that was a series of children's books, okay, and
it was.
they're very good children's books from what I've heard.
Couldn't tell you.
But what they should have made a series of children's books out of was the original Cannonball Run because it was simple-minded and moronic. And when something's simple-minded and moronic, it's ripe for being brought back in Hollywood.
It sure is. And who would you first think of, to step into the shoes of, who's the director of those? Oh, Hal Needham.
Hal Needham.
Former stuntman Hal Needham.
Yes.
Well, Guy Ritchie
Guy Ritchie.
is in talks to do, he did Snatch with Brad Pitt and a bunch of other of those sort of highly stylized crime type of films.
Right.
Is in talks to do a remake of 1982?
1980, 82, 83.
Which is
somewhere around
30 years ago almost, comic book.
there. Well, they
man.
did 3 of those things as I remember it.
No, 2.
Was it 2? I thought it was
God, why
3.
do I remember this? Cannonball Run,
Yeah,
Cannonball Run 2,
2.
and then there was another film that sort of was like Cannonball Run, but it wasn't called Cannonball Run. It had John Candy and a bunch of other folks. Write us and let us know what it's called because I'm blanking at the moment.
Death Race 2000.
No, that was not it. That's actually a good movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
David
Guy
Cameron.
Ritchie is in talks. Guy would like Brad Pitt to step into the
Sure, why
into
not?
into the Burt Reynolds role.
They got to race electric cars.
God, Burt Reynolds, Roger Moore, Farrah Fawcett, Dom DeLuise, Dean Martin, Sammy
Oh, it
Davis.
was a
Jesus,
smorgasbord
no,
of
no, no.
B-movie actors in those things.
B movie.
It was-
Well, Yeah, okay, Burt Reynolds was your
number
A-star,
one
and then
draw.
everyone else after
Dean
that.
Martin.
God, and I remember
Shoot.
the second one. I think.
By the time they did the Cannonball Run movies, yeah, Dean Martin was a B-movie celebrity.
He was
His
doing
show had been
any
off
movie.
the air for
He
at
wasn't
least
doing
6 or
any
7
Oh,
years.
God, longer than
and
that.
and
Longer
and
than
when
that.
it did
He
go off
was-
the air, it was down to the point where all it was
Farrah
the
Fawcett
celebrity
was-
roasts.
Yeah. That's exactly what
Dean
that was.
Martin. By the time the second one came out, he was like 4 or 5 years away from dying.
Yeah.
But those celebrity roasts were huge.
And as I remember, the second film introduced Jackie Chan to American audiences.
Jackie
Oh,
Chan was in the
man.
second film. Yeah.
Frank Sinatra appears in the second
There you
one,
go.
blatantly not in the same scene with the other actors.
Well-
Go rent it; you'll see what I mean. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's one of those things. You get on the phone with the Rat Pack. You
Let's
want to
get
be in
together.
this. You want to be in this film for 5 minutes. It's a hoot.
Yeah.
We'll give you $20,000. Yeah,
God.
okay, fine.
Martin-
Can I hold my drink and my smoke while I'm doing it? You betcha you can.
Martin and Sammy Davis are dressed as priests in the first one, and Dean and Burt Reynolds looks at Sammy Davis at one point and calls him the Chocolate Monk. Stuff you could not get away with today. But anyway, in case Guy Ritchie's deal falls through, there's another director who's interested in stepping into it. Sean Levy, who did the Night at the Museum movies,
Yeah.
would like to take a crack at it. And he said if he gets the chance to do it, he would like his Night at the Museum star Ben Stiller
Of course.
to step
well,
into the
yeah.
Burger Run.
Ben Stiller.
So yeah,
Okay.
look for that.
Our final story is the remake of Excalibur. John Borman's
John
Excalibur.
Borman's, which is kind of the quintessential King Arthur story.
Sort
for
of,
me.
kind of. Excalibur is great up until about the halfway point, and then it sort of falls apart.
Falls apart a little
story-wise.
bit.
Kneel down to the
exactly.
squire.
Brian said that film had Liam Neeson and
Patrick
Patrick
Stewart.
Stewart as well.
That film had a lot of people
Yeah.
in it who weren't real big at the time, but went on to do stuff.
It launched-
was very recognizable.
Launch careers. Brian Singer, the man who gave us the previous Superman film,
Yes.
as well as several other things in the past, had
Probably
planned.
favorite
Superman
film.
Returns.
Superman Returns had planned on doing a remake of John Borman's Excalibur. That film has fallen off the rails completely at this point.
Poor Brian.
But it has freed up Brian to accelerate another project, one that is near and dear to his heart, and that is
X-Men.
Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, great.
Not the Sci-Fi Channel TV series. This will be
The Glenn A. Larseny's
yes,
version
this will
of
be
Battlestar
Glenn Larson's
Galactica.
version,
Which was
and
not the Glenn Larson version.
and you
Which was not the
scoff-
sci-fi version. no.
which yeah, the Glenn Larson version, the lousy version.
The lousy
Let's just
version.
say that. But this Brian Singer one, if you scoff, and I scoffed because I thought, who wants to see a remake of the lousy TV series from the 70s? Just took a big step up in credibility because John Orloff has been hired as the screenwriter. He wrote Band of Brothers, ladies and gentlemen. So the writer of Band of Brothers has now been attached to write Brian Singer's Battlestar Galactica.
Well, you mean Brian's not going to get his crummy writer friends who write lists about everything he does to make
Maybe
another
he's-
crummy movie that nobody's going to go
Maybe
see?
he's learned his lesson in that regard.
Gee
Tom.
whiz.
It only took him how many movies to figure that one out?
Yeah, thanks for trashing Superman into the ground along the way. I appreciate that a lot,
Sure
Brian.
delayed a good
What's
movie
interesting
coming
is,
out for 5
is how
years.
much time are they going to give for the sci-fi TV series to sort of have a little leeway before this one's going to come out? You know, it seems like it's a little hot on the heels.
I don't know. I don't understand why they're doing it in the first place outside of Glenn Larson's ego. I mean,
Yeah.
what they did on Sci-Fi Channel is fine all by itself. You don't need to revisit Battlestar Galactica, especially with a bad version of
Well,
it.
it
Even
hasn't
though even though the writer's got a good pedigree, you just know that this is not going to be
No,
as good
no.
as what they did on Sci-Fi
Still
Channel.
all been he's been talking about it for a really
True,
long time.
that's true. But the fact that they've hired a writer says that it's been trumped up a little bit, moved up on the rails a little bit there.
Okay.
But
Might be
anywho,
right.
That's it. We're done. We're finished. We're out of here. We got no more
'cause
media
we're tired.
news. But you can go to the store's website, check out all the media news that Bocephus sends me, and
Mm-hmm.
I post up there. And where's the store's website at?
it is on that ragtag fleet known as Sarah.
Sarah.
Maybe you AARP or you should try ginkgo biloba. www.myalternatereality.com.
So stop off at the store's website, check out all the media news that Bo sends me that I post up, and until next time, this is coming.
Oh, and this is Captain Underpants.
And this, oh, you stole it. This is no
Hey,
longer
Captain
Captain
Underpants.
Underpants.
Colonel
The Yankee.
Brazier's on the phone.
Yeah, this is JR saying.
I'm putting Captain Underpants on there.
The Video Outhouse is brought to you by some of the finest people willing to work for free. This is a list of some of them.